Discover the incredible journey of this grandma, 30 years of trauma revealed and transformed. Evelyn rolled the dough with the practiced ease of a woman who had made the same apple pie for 30 years. Each stroke was rhythmic and soothing, yet beneath her tender movements resided a deep-seated ache, the weight of loss that had shaped her life since that dreadful day. She hummed old country tunes, disguising the storm that brewed within her heart, a quiet battlefield where love and grief waged war. The rain tapped gently against the window, mirroring both the patter of her thoughts and the long-delayed arrival of her estranged granddaughter, Emma. Emma's words echoed in her mind, "You've always been strong, Grandma." But was that strength, or just a facade? At 72, Evelyn felt fragile, like the thin crust she was crafting, easily cracked and flaked by the sudden arrival of memories that threatened to unravel her. She blinked furiously, sweat beading on her brow, half expecting the heavy air to deliver another blow. Would she have to reveal the darkness buried beneath those sweet apple slices, or would she let the past suffocate her gently, like the warmth of baking cinnamon? As she sprinkled sugar over the crust, a voice in her head demanded clarity. What would Emma find when she stood in that kitchen? A woman who had sacrificed her own dreams for the sake of her family. Evelyn couldn't help but tremble at the thought of vulnerability. How could she share the depth of her loss, the tears that fell like rain on that fateful day, without shattering the delicate bond they were attempting to rebuild? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The door creaked open. Emma stood on the threshold like a gust of wind about to sweep through. They exchanged awkward smiles, and Evelyn felt time swirling around them, years of absence condensed into this single moment. She sensed Emma's uncertainty, that hidden doubt, and it twisted in her chest. Evelyn wanted to reassure her, yet the walls she had built around her heart felt insurmountable. Distrust churned within, an unease that whispered of betrayal by the hands of fate. Days passed, and they shared memories buried in boxes, laughter mingling with unshed tears. Subsisting under the surface of their reconnection was a tension that laced their interactions. With every similarity discovered, the gaping hole left by absence widened. But their fragile peace shattered abruptly when a developer's rusted sign suddenly marred the landscape outside. The land Evelyn had cherished, where her husband had dreamt, was threatened. Memories clawed at her mind, forcing her to confront her own past while she watched fear creep into Emma's eyes. A question hung in the air, heavy and unrelenting: what was heritage worth when faced with greed? As they stood shoulder to shoulder, the weight of their family history clashed with the uncertainties of their future. The fire within Evelyn ignited, and she felt compelled to act. But the specter of what they stood to lose loomed larger than any fight. And just as they began to find their strength together, a shattering event threatened to dismantle not just their dreams but the very fabric of their rekindled relationship. Each slamming door, each car accelerating past, left them dangling on the precipice of despair. What lay ahead was uncertain, but the road of anguish was undeniable, beckoning them to confront their unspoken truths. Evelyn stood by the window, heart pounding, contemplating the crude sign that now marred her cherished view. An encroaching development threatened her dreams, a stark representation of how easily everything she had built could be dismantled. She felt a swell of indignation rise within her, a defiance that had long been dormant. Would she really allow someone else to dictate the fate of her memories, of their future? It was time to find her voice. Emma's hand found hers, a tentative connection filled with unspoken support. In that moment, Evelyn recognized she wasn't alone in this fight. Emma was a reflection of all the hope Evelyn harbored, a vessel of everything she wished to pass on. Deep inside, a flicker of courage began to assemble. It wasn't just about preserving land, it was about reclaiming her identity, one that had been dormant for far too long. "Let us confront them," Evelyn finally said, her voice steady and resolute. The words hung in the air, electrifying the space between them. Emma's eyes widened, surprise morphing into delight. Inside that reaction lay both fear and excitement, the generational gap narrowing as they both recognized the gravity of their choice. They began to strategize, a flurry of ideas woven through their conversations. What resources could they deploy? Who in the community could stand with them? Each inquiry revealed the extent of Evelyn's knowledge, a reservoir of wisdom harvested from years of experience, and Emma's youthful energy sparked something within her that had long been faded. "Grandma," Emma said, her voice a mix of awe and curiosity, "I never knew you had such a fire for this place." A small smile crept across Evelyn's lips. Perhaps there was more to her narrative than she had ever allowed herself to acknowledge. The courage to stand against a developer transformed into an unexpected lesson in self-discovery, each challenge unearthing new layers of her being. That night, as they planned in the dim light of the old kitchen, Evelyn stumbled upon forgotten dreams from her youth. The aspirations she had set aside while raising her children resurfaced, each of them calling for acknowledgement. She had once dreamed of opening a bakery, a voice within urging her to create delectable pastries. Wasn't this push to defend her heritage akin to reclaiming that spark of creativity? A revelation ignited in her heart. It was not just about saving the land, it was about reclaiming the woman she had once aspired to be. The prospect of combining her passion for baking with their cause twisted into a plan: a dessert sale to fund community initiatives aimed at saving the land. Emma's eyes lit up as they brainstormed recipes, the excitement bridging the gap of years lost. However, doubt loomed close. Would the community come together, or would her past failures resurface? Each step forward was a dance on the edge of vulnerability. Evelyn questioned if her efforts would even be enough or if they would fail as others had before. As they wrapped up their plans, doubts began to crystallize into determination. Evelyn recognized that while the world was rife with uncertainties, the choice to act on her convictions was now within her grasp. She was no longer merely a bystander in her own life, this was her legacy, her fight. But as the night deepened, a distant sound echoed, a voice she hadn't heard in years calling into the dark. Both women froze, tension igniting the air. Who could it be? The unsettling thought crept in. A figure from her past resurfacing could threaten the fragile bond she had just begun to rekindle with Emma. "Let us see who it is," she whispered, reluctant yet compelled to face whatever uncertain twist awaited them on the threshold. Evelyn felt her heart quicken as she approached the door. Each step echoed the uncertainty swirling within her. Emma remained close, a silent partner in this tense moment. The air was thick with unvoiced fears. She hesitated, instinctively drawing in a deep breath that felt weighted with nostalgia. Memories flickered through her mind, past encounters, broken connections, and the warmth of familiar love that had once enveloped her. As she opened the door, the dim light fell on a figure she recognized too well. Mark, her estranged brother, stood on the threshold, expression a mix of hurt and apprehension. Evelyn felt a wave of mixed emotions flooding in. This was a man who had once shared her laughter but had become a ghost of her past. "Evelyn," he breathed, his voice strained yet familiar. The moment shattered her newly forged resolve. The past surged forward, tangling her ambitions in a web of old grievances. Mark's presence didn't just resurrect buried memories, it also unleashed emotions she had thought long buried. Would this twist in her narrative swallow her hope whole? She momentarily faltered. "Why are you here?" she managed, the edge in her tone reflecting years of hurt. "I heard about the development," he replied, his eyes pleading for understanding. "I'm here to help." Evelyn sensed a tidal wave of skepticism wash over her. How could she possibly trust him? The years spent in silence, the unresolved battles, suddenly felt like an impediment to her current fight. She faced him, determined yet wrestling with a familiar resentment. Help? After all these years? Please, just listen. His expression softened. I understand what this land means to you. Evelyn shared a glance with Emma, seeking a semblance of clarity. Emma's youth offered a reminder. Their joint mission was more significant than anyone's frailties, even her brother's. Yet the weight of betrayal hung palpably between the siblings, a lingering odor of unresolved tensions. Fine, Evelyn said, suppressing a sigh. But understand this fight isn't for show. It's about reclaiming who I am. She felt a curious interplay of emotions, fear of being hurt again, yet a cautious flicker of excitement at the idea of reuniting with her brother under such pressing circumstances. Perhaps forging alliances wasn't just about the external conflict, maybe it was about healing old wounds. As they sat around the kitchen table, Mark laid out his knowledge of real estate laws, asserting that he had contacts who could aid their cause. Curiosity mingled with suspicion as he discussed strategies for contacting local media, a tactic Evelyn had not considered. Emma listened intently, her eyes darting between the two adults engaged in this complex tangle of history. For the first time, Evelyn found herself thinking that perhaps her brother's return wasn't just a ghost of the past but a potential ally in a battle that felt larger than herself. Yet the seeds of doubt still lingered, reminding her that opening herself up meant risking more exposure to hurt. As the conversation unfolded, shadowed by both harmony and tension, Evelyn's focus shifted. This moment became a reflection of her evolving self, one that was learning the delicate art of navigating both familial ties and personal ambitions. By the time they reached the end of their discussion, they hadn't forged a solid plan, but indications of cooperation had sprouted between them. Longing for resolution danced awkwardly with the fear of potential failure, a reminder that the past was never easily shed. Evelyn could feel a new resolve building within her. Her identity was no longer confined to her history. But even as she embraced her brother's presence, nagging doubts about the stability of this foundational shift crept in. Would this new alliance threaten her relationship with Emma? Evelyn steeled herself for the possibilities. If confrontation was the path to growth, maybe she could redefine her engagement not just with external forces, but within the very fabric of her family. The question lingered, barely a whisper, would she allow past wounds to dictate her future? The fragility of this tenuous piece loomed large in her mind. As she looked at the two most significant people in her life, she knew that the coming days would demand even more courage than she had mustered thus far. Her journey had only just begun. The night grew colder, and as Evelyn prepared to dive deeper into the tangled web of her past, a sudden thought struck her: what if Mark had a hidden agenda? What if, in the end, he sought to undermine everything she was fighting for? The uncertainty clenched around her heart anew as the next chapter of her journey unfolded before her. Evelyn's mind raced as night unfurled its shadows in the corners of the room. Mark's promise of help stirred a conflicting cocktail of hope and suspicion, each sip more intoxicating than the last. She could feel the weight of decisions pressing down on her. The essence of her fight was at stake. Here was her brother, a figure wrapped in familiarity yet steeped in doubt, ready to intertwine their fates anew. Let us not pretend we're not in murky waters here, she said finally, locking eyes with Mark, an intensity shimmering in the air. What is your real motivation? Why now? He leaned back slightly, the tension rising like steam around them. She watched every flicker of thought playing across his face, and for a moment, memory surged, a sibling bond stitched with laughter, now unraveling before her. Because I care about you and what is left of our family, he replied, though she noted the hesitation, the slight tightening of his jaw. Evelyn felt the ache of years rush at her. Could this man ever be trusted? This doubt echoed through the labyrinth of her heart, yet she knew every moment spent wallowing in the past only stifled her resolve. Let us focus on the development, Then, she said, hardening her voice. If you're going to be involved, you need to be fully transparent. Otherwise, this is over before it even starts. Fine. Transparency it is, he replied, almost defensively. As they discussed the logistics of rallying local support, she felt a shift in her perspective. There was an undeniable synergy in their conversations, an unexpected alignment of purpose. Mark outlined potential strategies for outreach with a clarity that surprised her, his knowledge rekindling the kind of sibling cooperation she feared was irrevocably lost. She found herself engaging, the architect within her emerging as she explored angles she hadn't previously considered. But with each idea he proposed, the churning storm of skepticism brewed within. So you think the media will care about our struggle? It's not some sensational story, she challenged, crossing her arms, her defenses instinctively rising. Don't underestimate the power of a good narrative, he replied, his voice steady. People relate to stories of resilience, of reclaiming what is yours. If we can frame this right, the LLC it's not just about land, it's about life. The spark of his belief ignited something in Evelyn. Could they redefine the narrative together? What if their story could resonate beyond their immediate struggles? Evelyn's thoughts began to whirl with old hopes that fought against years of skepticism. You really believe we can turn this around? She confronted, gauging his conviction. Absolutely, he replied, and she noted the way his intensity coated the words with an undeniable authenticity. The glint in his eyes spoke volumes, it was a light she had missed throughout their estrangement. As they mapped out their strategy, the dynamics shifted, echoing the delicate balance of trust and doubt. She consciously sought to dismantle the walls within her, opening space for possibility. Perhaps this collaboration could morph into something richer than either of them anticipated. Yet, a shadow of apprehension lingered at the edge of her thoughts. What about Emma? She soon realized that she had not involved her in this discussion sufficiently. A sense of urgency washed over her. The last thing she wanted was to alienate the one person who most deserved clarity in this unfolding chaos. Emma was perceptive. If she sensed tension between her mother and uncle, it might impact her more deeply than either adult anticipated. As they concluded the evening, Evelyn felt drained but resolute. She could not allow the past to smother her capacity for growth. Her engagement with Mark, though fraught with risk, opened a pathway not only to reclaiming her land but to reclaiming the foundations of family layers of reality she had once believed lost forever. Standing in the dim light of her kitchen, she recognized that embracing her brother was also about redefining what family meant. But before she could serve clarity through the storm, doubt seeped in. Was she ready to pave this new way, knowing it could lead to further heartache? The night air chill wrapped around her as she made her way to bed, each heartbeat whispering a reminder of the gravity of her choices. Her future rested delicately within the balance of these newfound alliances. And as she closed her eyes, she wondered how far she might have to stretch to uphold not just her ambitions but her entire identity. What lay ahead could either build or shatter her resolve, and she felt it an insistent beckoning from within. Would she confront the hidden truths waiting to unravel? The dawn promised not just light but the potential of transformation, and Evelyn steeled herself for whatever revelations awaited her on this unpredictable path. The first rays of dawn broke through Evelyn's curtains, casting a soft glow that contrasted sharply with the turbulence of her mind. She rose from her restless sleep, haunted by fragmented dreams that echoed concerns over her family's disjointed past. Today was pivotal, the air was thick with anticipation and uncertainty, and she felt the gradual shift in her resolve intensifying. The thought of Emma lingered heavily. After all, it was her daughter, the center of her life, who stood to be most impacted by Evelyn's choices. She needed to weave Emma into this narrative, to ensure she understood the depth of their struggle. The child's eyes were perceptive, always searching for authenticity. Evelyn realized she needed to model that truth, facing down the shadows of doubt with vulnerability. As she prepared breakfast, each movement felt deliberate. The eggs sizzled in the pan while the aroma filled the kitchen, adding a sense of normalcy to the morning chaos. But beneath the surface, Evelyn was grappling with inner turmoil. Could she bridge the gap between her past affiliations with Mark and create a stable foundation for Emma? Would transparency reinforce their bond, or would it open old wounds that should remain hidden? "Mom, can I help?" Emma's voice interrupted her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. Evelyn smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Of course, sweetie. How about you set the table?" It was a small act, but it symbolized a connection, a mundane task imbued with the essence of unity. As they moved through the morning routine, Evelyn perceived a growing distance from her previous hesitations. Engaging with Emma nurtured a sense of purpose that began to outweigh her doubts. Still, every time she thought of her meeting with Mark later that day, the gnawing tension swelled. Could she allow Mark's intentions to weave themselves fully into the fabric of their lives? What if he misstepped again, as he had so many years ago? After breakfast, Evelyn invited Emma into the living room to share a little more about her day's plans. "Emma, there is something important I need to talk to you about. It's about Uncle Mark." Emma's expression shifted, eyes widening with cautious curiosity. "Is he coming over?" "Yes, and we're going to discuss some things that might affect us all." Evelyn hesitated, weighing her words carefully. "I want you to know that I'm doing this for our family. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that are really hard, but they have a purpose. Like when you decided we needed a new house?" Emma asked, tilting her head. While the question seemed innocent, it pierced straight to the heart of guilt, a reminder of the upheaval Evelyn had often shielded her child from. "Exactly, but this is different. It's about reclaiming what is ours in a way that could bring us closer as a family. Will you support me in that?" Her tone pushed for clarity but fluttered with uncertainty. Emma nodded, though skepticism lingered in her eyes, a reflection of Evelyn's own tumultuous reservations. "If you say it'll be okay, then I trust you." With those words, a flicker of determination ignited within Evelyn. This was more than just a fight for land, it was a fight for identity and integrity, not only her own but for Emma's future as well. As she moved through the day, thoughts morphed into plans. She drafted lengths of dialogue in her mind to ensure she articulated her vision clearly to Mark. There would be no room for ambiguity this time, their new alliance depended on that. But with every step forward, the fear clawed back into her consciousness. What if unveiling the truth created new fractures instead of healing old ones? As they approached the meeting hour, she felt her heartbeat quicken, adrenaline fueling a mixture of fear and anticipation. She was about to confront not just Mark's intentions but the very foundation of their family history. With one last glance in the mirror, she whispered affirmations into her reflection, readying herself for the turmoil ahead. This wasn't merely about reconciliation with Mark, this was about strengthening her identity. Yet clarity flickered like a candle caught in a storm. Was she prepared to wield the truths she wished to share? The complexities of their shared narrative loomed large. The sound of the doorbell startled her from the reverie. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the weight of both dread and purpose settle into her core. She opened the door to Mark, his face poised with uncertainty, and wondered if the next few moments would reveal the strength she had so desperately worked to construct or shatter every fragile piece she had begun to rebuild. In the charged silence that filled the space between them, Evelyn recognized the vital importance of the conversation that lay ahead. Would she finally break free from the chains of her past and carve a future, or would she remain anchored in a cycle of doubt? The weight of silence hung between them, electric and heavy. Evelyn felt Mark's scrutiny, dissecting her with an intensity she had often avoided. Instead of retreating, she clenched her fists at her sides, both a shield and an anchor, preparing to ground herself in the moment. "Evelyn," His voice held a timbre filled with uncertainty, yet she sensed the flicker of old familiarity behind it. It's been a while. Too long, she replied, tempering her tone with a practiced calm that barely masked the turmoil brewing within. The air crackled as memories surfaced of shared laughter, moments of betrayal, and the ever-present shadow of their shared past. She had vowed today would be different. Today, she would not be the passive recipient of his decisions. They moved to the living room, an arena she had long fortified with thoughts of resilience and vulnerability. Sitting across from him felt like stepping onto precarious ground. It demanded balance. "Let us address the elephant in the room," Evelyn said, her pulse quickening. "You're here because you want something. I need to understand your intentions." Mark leaned forward, hands clasped together, his expression a mixture of resolve and distress. "I came here to do right by you and Emma. I know it might not seem that way, but I want to help rebuild the bridges I burned." "Bridge building implies collaboration, Mark. But trust is not a currency you handed me lightly." Her voice quivered with the strength of her conviction. The stakes were higher than just property. It was her relationship with Emma that necessitated clarity. She needed to decipher the motives behind his motives. "I know I've made mistakes," he admitted, the weight of regret pressing his shoulders down. "But I want to make this right together. I want to be part of Emma's life in a meaningful way." His words dropped like stones into her heart. Could she trust him? Memories of his past betrayal swirled around her like fog. Yet, could she deny the longing for her daughter to know her extended family? "Do you understand what you're asking?" Evelyn challenged, probing. "I cannot just hand you my trust. I need actions that support your words. You have to be ready to confront the damage you've done, not only to me but to your relationship with Emma." Silence folded again into the room. Mark's gaze bore into hers, understanding the depth of her fears. "I want to own up to everything I've done," he replied. "No more hiding. I'm ready to face whatever it takes." Evelyn could almost hear the conflicting narratives clashing in her mind. Trust was built on transparency, yet the scars of the past hovered like ghosts between them. Would he step into the light, or would the shadows claim him once again? "This isn't just business, Mark," she said, her voice steadier now. "This is about family. It's about Emma's future and mine. I'm not agreeing blindly, I'm doing this with the hope that both of you can forge something authentic." He nodded, and for the first time, she sensed a glimmer of potential beneath his regret. The conversation turned to plans, the details knotting together the fabric of their disparate lives, each thread a reflection of both hope and fear. But with every word exchanged, doubts crept in. Was Evelyn prepared to gamble so much of her emotional capital with someone who had once betrayed her trust so thoroughly? As they wrapped up the conversation, Mark made a promise. "I know I have a long way to go, but I'm ready to take the first steps. Together, if you'll allow it." Evelyn stood, evaluating his earnestness against her internal reservations. Could this be the chance to rebuild not just the relationship, but the familial bond Emma so desperately needed? The possibility hung tantalizingly close, but so did her fears. With every moment spent in discussion, Evelyn felt fragments of her old self being pieced together, but each piece was an echo of a lesson learned, a mistake acknowledged. The doorbell rang, a sudden intrusion after their deep exchange. She walked over, but before she opened it, a fleeting thought gripped her. What if this visitor disrupted her fragile peace? Evelyn took a deep breath and opened the door, steeling herself for whatever revelation awaited on the other side. The face that greeted her was familiar, but carried unexpected news that could shift the trajectory of everything they had just discussed. "Evelyn, we need to talk about Emma's school." There was urgency in the woman's voice, and a sense of foreboding settled over Evelyn like a shroud. If this meeting with Mark had been about mending paths, what awaited her now threatened to unravel the delicate stitches she had just begun to weave. Evelyn's heart raced as she processed the urgency in the visitor's voice. The woman's dark hair was pulled back tightly, accentuating the furrowed expression on her brow. It was Mrs. Linden, the school principal, and Evelyn knew instinctively that any conversation regarding Emma's schooling was bound to be significant. "What about Emma's school?" Evelyn asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Mrs. Linden stepped inside, her demeanor serious. "There have been some concerns regarding her adjustment this semester. We've noticed she seems distracted and withdrawn." Evelyn's mind raced, juggling the implications. Emma had been more reserved lately, an effect of the upheaval in their lives, but was this an indication of something deeper? Anxiety gripped her. The possibility of her daughter struggling in the midst of her own chaotic emotions felt like a double blow. "I didn't know," Evelyn managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean by concerns?" "Her grades are slipping, and we're starting to see behavioral issues in class. I genuinely believe it may be related to external factors," Mrs. Linden explained carefully, her eyes steady. "I recommend we set up a meeting with a counselor." Evelyn's thoughts shifted violently back to Mark's visit. His re-entry had rekindled emotions she'd tried to shield from Emma. If her daughter was suffering, would bringing Mark back into their lives magnify Emma's distress? Or could he be a stabilizing force? Torn between options, Evelyn's instinct screamed for introspection. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," she said, attempting to mask her internal strife. "I'll make sure to organize something." But how? A meeting with a counselor felt like a superficial band-aid compared to the real monster lurking beneath the surface of their lives. As Mrs. Linden explained how they would collaborate to support Emma, Evelyn felt a simmering frustration rise within her. Once again, she was grappling with an impending sense of helplessness. Over the years, she had fought through adversities and emerged stronger, yet here she was, standing in a challenging intersection of her child's needs and her own fears. "Evelyn, are you all right?" Mrs. Linden's expression softened, her understanding seeping through the professional facade. Evelyn blinked, steeling herself against vulnerability. "I will be," she said, the taut edge of her voice betraying the conflict within. After Mrs. Linden left, the silence enveloped her once more heavy and oppressive. She paced. Her earlier conversations with Mark now felt like fleeting moments, shallow breaths against a tidal wave of uncertainty regarding Emma. As she stood in the living room, she couldn't help but question her capacity to hold her family together. The focus that she had brought to her encounter with Mark now transformed into an urgent internal reckoning. She plucked her phone from the table and opened a draft message addressed to Mark. What if his presence could actually be beneficial for Emma? What if he could step up, everything she craved for him to be? Or were those desires just remnants of a past she desperately wanted to rewrite? Her fingers hovered over the screen as she typed a message detailing Emma's situation. "We need to talk about Emma's school. Things are worse than I thought." This was her pivotal decision point, not just about Emma but about her own journey to seek collaboration, even if it meant confronting unresolved vulnerabilities. After she hit send, Evelyn sank into her chair, binding her nails together as anxiety coursed through her veins. The risk, the desire to protect Emma, and the hope that Mark could rise to the occasion kept her heart pounding. Moments ticked by as fear and anticipation warred. Would Mark respond positively? Was it too much to hope for change, for Jenkins to be part of the solution? If this meeting could lead to something meaningful for Emma, then it warranted the gamble. Her phone buzzed angrily in her hand, and as she looked down, a single word stood out from Mark's response: "Absolutely." The ground beneath her felt unsteady, and the potential of this new pathway sent her thoughts spiraling into unforeseen territory. Could they face the shadows of their past together? The next encounter promised to challenge every resolution she had forged in the past, a chance to confront not just Mark but the intricate dynamic of their evolving family. Evelyn realized she was on the brink of a crossroads, uncertain whether to embrace the potential of rebuilding fragile connections or retreat once more into isolation. But family meant more than just shared blood, it meant stepping into the unknown for the sake of love. Taking a deep breath, she prepared herself, knowing that this was just the beginning. Would she find the courage to create a supportive structure for Emma? Or would the ghosts from their past once again steer the narrative in a direction she'd long wished to avoid? Evelyn sat on the edge of her armchair, her thoughts swirling like dark clouds. The weight of her earlier conversation with Mark settled heavily on her chest. Absolutely. That word reverberated in her mind, its simplicity contrasting sharply with the complexity of their history. What did it truly mean for their future, and more critically, for Emma? She rubbed her temples, trying to stave off the burgeoning headache triggered by the tension and uncertainty clouding her heart and mind. For too long, she had felt like she was drifting, reacting instead of taking charge. But Emma's struggles ignited something deeper within her, a fierce determination to reclaim her role as a mother. Evelyn reached for her planner, pages filled with notes of work commitments and household tasks, but it was barely organized. She scoured the scattered mess and recognized something profound. She had been so busy keeping everything together that she had forgotten to prioritize the people who mattered most. Emma needed her, but she also needed a plan, a tangible action to create a supportive environment for her daughter to flourish. She inhaled deeply and stood up, her pulse quickening with renewed resolve. The first step was to address the meeting with the counselor. It would need to be collaborative, not only involving her but also incorporating Mark's perspective. After all, he was Emma's father, a fact Evelyn had spun into a thread of resentment, now feeling as though it might just weave them into a unified front. What kind of parent could she be if she relied on her anger instead of actively seeking growth? Flipping to a new page in her planner, she began drafting notes for the meeting, a guide for her thoughts, a means of navigating the anxiety that thrummed beneath the surface. Focus on Emma's strengths, she wrote. Identify specific behaviors for assessment. She also underlined, discuss family dynamics and potential support systems. It was eye-opening, this urge to create a framework where emotional intelligence could guide their conversations about Emma. As thoughts crystallized on paper, she felt a sense of empowerment taking root. She began to envision the best version of herself stepping into that meeting, a version that was not just reacting to circumstances but was proactive and resilient. This was about reclaiming authority over her life, her choices, and her responsibility as a mother. But the looming presence of Mark cast a shadow over her resolve. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the past once again surface, derailing any progress? She thought back to a time when the two of them had been hopeful and excited for the future. The pang of nostalgia mixed with irritation, a reminder that second chances often come wrapped in uncertainty. Evelyn decided to take control of the narrative. She crafted a tentative agenda for the meeting with the counselor, outlining what she wanted to communicate. Not only would they discuss Emma, but Evelyn would also make her own state of mind a priority. She was laying the groundwork for herself, not just as a caretaker but as a participant in an evolving family dynamic where each person had a voice and a vital role. With each stroke of the pen, she felt lighter, almost buoyant. Clarity washed over her, the certainty that vulnerability did not equate to weakness but was a bridge toward deeper understanding and connection. Time passed quicker than she expected, yet a nagging anxiety lingered. She glanced at her phone again. Mark had not yet responded with the time. That unsettling quietude grew louder. What if he clung to old patterns? What if he didn't want to engage? She had to prepare for that outcome too. Pushing herself to set boundaries was essential. She couldn't rely on him alone to create stability for Emma. Evelyn recognized her own power in setting expectations and demanding accountability. Just when she began to outline her expectations, her phone chimed sharply, breaking the silence. Mark's message appeared, "When works for you." "I'm ready." Evelyn felt a mix of anticipation and dread. This was exactly the moment she had steered toward, yet the anxiety resurfaced with ferocity. Would she watch Mark transform before her eyes, or would the conversation unravel into old habits? Emboldened, she typed back a suggestion for when they could meet with the counselor, trying to keep her emotions in check. As she hit send, she realized there was no turning back. The stakes were higher than just their relationship, they were entwined with Emma's well-being. The next step, a potential breakthrough for her family, was on the horizon. But would they stumble, or would they find a way to rise together? The collision of past and present loomed ahead, and as she stared at her phone waiting for his reply, one question echoed in her mind: had she been brave enough to truly seek change, or was she about to face her greatest fears? Evelyn barely slept that night, a restless tide of emotions crashing against her resolve. Every time her phone lit up, she sat bolt upright, heart racing, only to be disappointed by the absence of new messages. The appointment with the counselor loomed like a storm cloud waiting to unleash. In the morning light, she sought refuge in her routine, determined to ground herself in something familiar. With Emma still asleep, she slipped into the kitchen and reached for a mug, the warmth of coffee a calming balm. But as she watched the steam rise, each puff seemed to whisper questions she was desperate to avoid. What if Mark didn't show up? What if he showed up, but they fought? Her planner lay open on the counter, the agenda she had crafted staring at her as though it were an unwritten script for a tense drama. She added a section labeled contingency plans, forcing herself to confront her fears head-on. What would happen if their discussions turned heated? Could she maintain composure for Emma's sake? She breathed deeply, clearing her mind, knowing that her emotional landscape would paint the meeting's backdrop. A soft shuffling broke her concentration, and Emma appeared, her hair tousled and eyes still heavy with sleep. Evelyn smiled, relief washing over her to see the bright spark of her daughter despite the tension threading through her chest. "Morning, sweetheart," Evelyn greeted, pouring a small bowl of cereal for Emma. "Are we still going to see the counselor today?" Emma asked, digging her spoon into the cereal. The directness in her question jolted Evelyn. Was Emma anxious too? "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. "It's going to be a good thing for us, for both of us. Just a way to talk about, well, everything." Emma nodded, though her brow furrowed with uncertainty. In that moment, Evelyn realized that her own apprehension would directly influence how Emma felt. She set down her coffee cup and knelt beside her daughter, searching for a way to frame this experience positively. "You know, talking helps. And it's okay to feel nervous about it all. We're going to be okay." Emma met her gaze, and Evelyn felt a flicker of connection. If she wanted to build a supportive environment that fostered Emma's growth, she needed to embody the emotional resilience she wished to instill. The time passed quickly as they prepared. Evelyn dressed deliberately, choosing a soft blue blouse that made her feel both powerful and calm. Each piece of clothing felt like a layer of armor. She glanced at her reflection, searching for a glimpse of the strong mother she aspired to be. "Ready?" she asked Emma, who donned a hesitant smile. "Ready," Emma echoed, the word hanging between them, laced with hope and fear in equal measure. The drive to the counseling center was filled with a mix of light conversation about Emma's upcoming school project, intended as a distraction from the impending meeting. Yet, as they neared the center, Evelyn's stomach began to twist into knots. What if Mark had decided to come empty-handed, carrying only residual tension from their past? Arriving at the building, Evelyn spotted Mark's vehicle parked outside. She hesitated for just a moment, a tight ball of anxiety tangling in her chest. But she reminded herself why they were there. She had to believe that growth was possible not just for Emma, but them as well. Taking a calming breath, she stepped out of the car and glanced down at Emma, who had already started toward the entrance. A flicker of admiration welled within her. Emma was facing this challenge, looking for the light amid uncertainty. If they were to forge a better path as a family, it would stem from courage that Evelyn was realizing she possessed, despite her fears. When they walked inside, there was no turning back. Each step felt heavier, yet invigorating. They waited in the reception area, the clock ticking toward their appointment, a countdown that felt like both a warning and a promise. Suddenly, the door swung open, and the counselor beckoned them in. Evelyn's heart raced as she exchanged glances with Mark. It was the moment they had both prepared for. Was this finally her chance to pave a new path, or would the shadows of their history pull them back into discord? As they crossed the threshold, an electric tension filled the air, and Evelyn silently questioned, would they come out transformed, or would they emerge unchanged, entangled in old patterns? Evelyn sat in the counseling room, the air thick with unspoken emotions. To her left, Mark fidgeted slightly. To her right, Emma looked up at her with wide, uncertain eyes. This moment was pivotal, a crossroads where past grievances could either derail or enrich their family narrative. The counselor, a calm presence named Dr. Hill, began the session with a gentle introduction, encouraging them to share what had brought them there. Evelyn's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. She took a breath, steeling herself, and spoke first. I want to focus on the future today, she stated firmly. Emma and I are here to find ways to support each other amidst the challenges we faced. As the words flowed from her lips, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time: control. She was not just a passive observer of her life but an active participant shaping their future. Dr. Hill nodded, encouraging Evelyn to continue, and with each sentence, she felt the chains of her past begin to crack. She recounted the emotional hurdles they had faced, her tone unwavering. The journey hadn't been easy, but the fight to reclaim what mattered propelled her forward. Emma looked at her mother with admiration, a connection sparking between them, igniting confidence that sparked more than just hope. Mom, I want to be close to Uncle Mark too, Emma interjected softly, her voice steady despite the weight of her feelings. He has family, right? Evelyn felt a tug at her heart, a blend of surprise and gratitude swirled within her. Emma's courage fortified her resolve. Yes, sweetheart, Evelyn responded, gazing into her daughter's eyes, mirroring the unfiltered love she had long kept hidden. Mark cleared his throat. I know I haven't always been the best brother, he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. I've made mistakes that hurt you both. I'm here to change that. Evelyn's stomach turned, the old scars ached under the weight of his honesty. Yet, she also sensed the potential for genuine connection. She could see the sincerity in Mark's eyes and knew that if she allowed herself to embrace this moment, they could build something new. Then let's find a way forward together, she replied, her voice clear and resolute. But it will take all of us: transparency, respect, and commitment. We need to trust each other. The discourse became more fluid. Dr. Hill facilitated a productive exchange, prompting Mark to share childhood memories that built a narrative the three of them could share. As they spoke, Evelyn felt the unseen walls crumble slowly, replaced by a tentative understanding that began to weave them into a cohesive unit. Perhaps we can start by making plans together, Mark suggested, his confidence visibly growing as he connected with Emma's enthusiasm. If we all agree on what we want, we can start making it happen. The air hummed with possibilities. Evelyn could feel the weight of years of division start to lift as they discussed family dinners, movie nights, even small outings, a rebirth of connection that she had once thought impossible. This was integration, this was the crafting of a new legacy. By the end of the session, as they stood to leave, a palpable shift had occurred. Evelyn looked at Mark, recalling the hurt that had lingered, yet recognizing the potential for growth that now lay before them. "Thank you for being present today," she said sincerely, feeling a warmth expand in her chest. Perhaps trust could be rebuilt slowly, like a well-risen loaf in the oven, destined to emerge golden. As they exited, Emma grabbed her mother's hand. "Can we make that apple pie tonight, Mom? For Uncle Mark?" Evelyn smiled, heart brimming with a renewed sense of purpose. "Absolutely. Let us make a feast of memories." Later that evening, the kitchen filled with the aroma of cinnamon and apples as they prepared their family recipe. Together, they shared laughter over flowery counters, relishing in the joy of creation. Evelyn realized this pie symbolized more than just a dessert, it represented the tangible achievements of confronting her past, redefining her identity, and weaving together the threads of family that had seemed permanently frayed. In the flurry of activity, Evelyn felt a solid confidence forming within her. She was not only embracing her role as a mother but also reclaiming the essence of who she was, a woman capable of transformation, partnership, and forgiveness. As the pie baked, she glanced at Mark, who was playfully teasing Emma across the room, a softness settling in their interactions. This connection had the potential to grow. She observed the delicate balance of acceptance and forgiveness blooming right before her eyes. With the pie cool and ready to share, Evelyn saw hope, family, and new beginnings on the horizon. She had navigated tumultuous waters and emerged with newfound strength, an identity enriched by connection rather than fractured by division. This was her achievement, a culmination of years of struggle yielding the beauty of reconciliation. The journey was just beginning, but the fight had laid the groundwork for relationships built on trust and understanding. And so, as they sat together at the dining table, forks poised, laughter filling the air, Evelyn cherished the moment. She had not just reclaimed land, she had reclaimed her family and herself. The empowering realization washed over her. Change was not contingent on the past, it bloomed from the courage to embrace vulnerability and strive for a united future. Join us in celebrating this transformation. You need to subscribe now to follow even more incredible journeys of personal growth and achievement. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and power the stories that inspire. Join the conversation and comment your thoughts on this conclusion and what it means to you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who might need to hear this message of hope and triumph. Only true fans of overcoming obstacles understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Don't miss out. This is the moment to show your support.